Imagine standing in an ancient forest where every single green leaf around you holds a mystery of life or death. One of these bushes could keep your family nourished for days, while the other could end your life before sundown. A single wrong choice meant days of violent illness with absolutely no medicine to save you. Even worse, nature carried deadly poisons that struck within hours without offering any second chances. When winter arrived, the pressure to forage meant gambling with your survival every time you felt hungry. There were no warning labels or hazard signs to help them separate food from fatal traps. To the naked eye, a lethal root looked just as delicious as a completely safe one. Every bite taken by our ancestors was a blind, heart-pounding leap into the unknown. Yet, against all odds, these vulnerable hunter-gatherers managed to map out the entire edible world. So, how did early humans figure out what was safe to eat before modern science even existed? The effortless way we eat today is separated from ancient terror by thousands of years of trial and error. Today, you can grab an apple off a grocery shelf without ever worrying that it might stop your heart. Our daily meals are a luxury purchased with the dangerous discoveries of countless generations. This shared food wisdom allowed our species to safely settle every single continent on Earth. Their triumph came down to 4 brilliant pillars: biology, childhood psychology, animal observation, and ancient cooking. Without any search engines to check if a berry was lethal, they relied on ingenuity hardwired into their bodies. Every staple fruit you love was once an untested gamble in the prehistoric wilderness. We sit safely at our dinner tables because our ancestors cracked nature's deadliest chemical codes. Let's unpack the hidden survival mechanics that kept humankind alive for hundreds of thousands of years. It all begins with an incredible built-in chemical detector hiding right inside your mouth. Every single human is born equipped with an instant biological alarm system. Your tongue houses about 25 distinct bitter taste receptors, known as TAS2Rs. These specialized sensors act as frontline security guards, inspecting everything before it reaches your stomach. When plant toxins touch your tongue, these receptors trigger an instant, violent urge to spit it out. It functions like an organic poison detector, scanning wild flora for hidden chemical threats. Nature actually does give us a warning label. It just writes it in intense bitterness instead of words. A tiny initial nibble was often all it took to trigger the body's internal safety siren. This simple oral checkpoint saved early foragers from swallowing massive, fatal doses of wild toxins. By blocking dangerous compounds at the entrance, our ancestors created their first line of defense. If the sample passed this initial chemical barrier, it earned a cautious green light for the tribe. For millions of years, wild plants evolved potent chemical weapons and toxins to protect themselves from predators. By sheer evolutionary coincidence, many of these deadly plant alkaloids register on our tongues as disgustingly bitter. Early humans who possessed sharp, bitter receptors spat out the poison and survived to pass on their genetics. Those with blunt taste senses frequently consumed lethal doses, removing their genes from the gene pool. Your deep aversion to bitter flavors is an ancient survival lesson permanently written into your DNA. Every time our ancestors rejected a bitter root, natural selection tightened its protective grip. Generations of brutal survival shaped human biology into a living encyclopedia of chemical alerts. Bitterness wasn't just an unpleasant flavor, it was nature screaming at us to back away immediately. Through relentless natural selection, our ancestors successfully filtered out the deadliest flora in their paths. When you cringe at bitter greens today, you are sharing the exact reflex that saved your ancestors' lives. Bitter isn't the only flavor carrying vital survival data. Our entire palate is a nutritional dashboard. Sweetness signals concentrated carbohydrates, providing the body with immediate, life-sustaining calories. The savory richness of umami alerts our brains to essential amino acids and protein sources. Salty tastes guide us directly to crucial minerals needed to maintain our body's electrolyte balance. Sharp sourness acts as a safety barrier against spoiled foods, dangerous fermentation, and bacterial decay. Together, these 5 foundational tastes gave early humans an intuitive chemical lab right inside their mouths. By trusting their basic flavor instincts, ancient foragers efficiently sorted wild harvests into calorie-rich categories. Sweet foods were almost universally safe, offering guaranteed energy for the entire tribe. The mouth's sensory dashboard gave humanity its first baseline guide to navigating a wild environment. Even today, your cravings for sweet, savory, and salty snacks are ancient nutritional instincts at work. However, relying purely on taste was never a foolproof survival strategy for our ancestors. Genetic research shows that our ability to detect specific bitter compounds dates back over 1 million years. Even early hominids who lived long before modern humans possessed these life-saving taste mutations. Surprisingly, these bitter receptors exist throughout the entire human body, including the lungs and gut. To make matters more complex, some harmless wild nuts tasted intensely bitter, despite being completely edible. And terrifyingly, several deadly plants produce no bitterness at all, easily slipping past oral defenses. Our ancestors quickly discovered that biology alone was not enough to guarantee their survival. The internal chemical scanner was brilliant, but it left critical blind spots in the wild. A deceptive plant could fool the tongue and still wreak havoc deep inside the digestive system. To stay alive, humans had to evolve beyond mere taste and develop cognitive survival strategies. Specialist animals, like koalas eating only eucalyptus, never have to waste energy wondering what is safe to eat. Humans, on the other hand, are adaptable omnivores faced with an endless and confusing variety of food choices. This created the omnivore's dilemma, an eternal mental tug-of-war between curiosity and intense caution. Driven by hunger, our ancestors felt the constant evolutionary urge to explore new sources of calories. Yet an equally powerful survival mechanism, food neophobia, pulled them back with a profound fear of the unknown. Balancing this tension between daring exploration and strict caution was essential to human survival. Being too reckless meant quick poisoning, while being overly timid meant eventual starvation. That lingering hesitation you feel when trying an exotic, unfamiliar dish is that very same ancient instinct. Our ancestors learned to look, smell, and deliberate carefully before letting anything novel touch their lips. Picky eating wasn't a troublesome habit back then. It was a vital psychological defense shield. Fascinatingly, this deep-seated fear of unfamiliar plants is hardwired into toddlers before they can even speak. Experiments at Yale revealed that young children will freely grab unfamiliar toys and household objects without hesitation. Yet the moment a toddler encounters an unfamiliar plant, they freeze and display immediate natural caution. Researchers discovered that infants treat flora as a distinct, potentially hazardous category of objects. Before interacting with a new plant, toddlers instinctively watch adult faces for clear social validation. Only when a trusted adult signals approval will a child feel safe enough to touch or taste the vegetation. This innate social learning mechanism kept prehistoric children from fatal foraging mistakes. A toddler refusing to eat green vegetables isn't misbehaving. They are running an ancient safety routine. Our brains arrive in this world pre-programmed to treat the botanical kingdom with intense respect. By learning through observation, the newest generation stays safe without needing to take deadly risks. When venturing into unfamiliar territory, early humans developed a genius strategy: letting wild animals take the risk first. If monkeys and primates were gorging on high tree fruits without harm, it provided valuable safety data. By tracking what fellow mammals ate, ancestral foragers gathered reliable clues without risking their own lives. Flocks of birds descending safely on berry patches served as an ancient billboard for edible fruit. Hunters and gatherers turned animal behavior into their very own living survival guide. Indigenous communities around the world continue to rely on this observational technique when exploring new lands. Outsourcing dietary risks to wildlife dramatically reduced fatal poisoning within ancestral bands. Every observed animal meal was carefully noted down and added to the community's collective memory. The natural world became a grand laboratory where animals served as our ancestors' field researchers. By paying close attention to nature's dining habits, early humans unlocked thousands of new, safe calories. However, our ancestors quickly discovered a major catch. An animal's stomach is not the same as a human's. A bird can effortlessly digest toxic seeds and berries that would be completely lethal to a human being. To avoid deadly mistakes, tribes had to build mental proxy maps of which animals could be reliably trusted. They learned that primates with similar digestive biology made far safer dietary role models than birds or rodents. Through careful observation, communities calibrated which wildlife signals to follow and which to ignore. Elders stepped in to ensure that eager young foragers didn't mimic animals with ironclad stomachs. Matching human biology with the right animal proxies gave early foragers an unprecedented safety advantage. This sophisticated understanding of animal digestion remains one of humanity's oldest ecological skills. Layer by layer, our ancestors refined animal observation into an exact, reliable science. With reliable animal guides identified, early humans unlocked the wild pantry like never before. Once a food's safety was confirmed, it became sacred knowledge that never had to be discovered again. Tribal elders, especially experienced women, served as the living libraries of food safety for their communities. Children absorbed these strict culinary rules through bedtime stories, cultural taboos, and campfire lore. Never eat the black seeds and always boil this specific root were distilled into unbreakable survival rules. These traditions weren't random superstitions. They were hard-won scientific protocols passed down through generations. Through oral tradition, the painful mistakes of previous generations protected the children of tomorrow. Cultural transmission allowed human dietary knowledge to accumulate and compound across centuries. No individual had to gamble with their life when the entire wisdom of the tribe had their back. Tools and food preparation rituals became cherished heirlooms of human survival. Every family recipe passed down by your grandparents is an echo of this ancient cultural shield. Our ancestors didn't just settle for avoiding poisons. They figured out how to turn deadly plants into staple foods. Consider cassava, a massive root crop packed with enough lethal cyanide in its raw form to kill millions. Today, it feeds over 800 million people worldwide, despite being naturally hazardous. By all reasonable logic, a poisonous tuber should have been permanently abandoned by early foragers. Instead of running away from its toxicity, ancient indigenous peoples saw an untapped gold mine of calories. They understood that eating it raw meant certain death, but refused to let the abundant root go to waste. Without any modern chemistry equipment, they pioneered an ingenious multi-step detoxification routine. Ancient Amazonian and tropical cultures transformed a deadly hazard into the foundation of their civilizations. What followed was one of the greatest feats of biochemical engineering in human history. Let's take a look at how early humans successfully neutralized nature's most terrifying defense mechanisms. First, ancient cooks grated the tough roots against abrasive stone boards to rupture plant cells and release toxic juices. Mashing the root activated natural enzymes that began breaking down the dangerous cyanide compounds inside. Next, they packed the pulp into long woven fiber presses to squeeze out every drop of poisonous liquid. They allowed the moist mash to ferment for days, letting helpful microbes destroy over 80% of remaining toxins. Boiling the pulp over roaring fires caused heat-sensitive residual poisons to evaporate harmlessly into the air. Finally, spreading the flour under the scorching tropical sun volatilized the very last traces of cyanide. This elaborate ancient pipeline reduced a lethal root to a completely safe, highly nutritious superfood. The detoxified flour was baked into crispy flatbreads that could be stored safely for months. A plant designed by nature to kill became the daily bread that sustained entire empires. It was pure biochemical mastery, invented thousands of years before the word chemistry ever existed. Another remarkable example was the humble acorn, which carpeted prehistoric forests by the billions. Raw acorns are packed with harsh, bitter tannins that damage the kidneys and make them impossible to digest. Indigenous cultures solved this by pounding the dried acorns into a fine meal using heavy stone mortars. They placed the ground flour in woven baskets and submerged them in flowing river streams for days on end. The cool, running water naturally dissolved and washed away the water-soluble tannins without destroying the nutrients. Once the bitterness was entirely rinsed away, the remaining flour was sweet, nutty, and completely safe to eat. Dropping hot stones into watertight cooking baskets boiled the acorn meal into rich, sustaining porridge. The mastery of fire allowed humans to break down complex anti-nutrients across dozens of wild plant species. Cooking transformed previously inedible wild landscapes into abundant buffets of safe calories. Through water, fermentation, and fire, humanity conquered plant chemical warfare once and for all. Human survival was never a lucky accident. It was a layered, multi-tiered defense system. First came our chemical defense, bitter taste receptors providing an immediate warning checkpoint in the mouth. Second was our cognitive defense, an innate childhood wariness that treated unfamiliar plants with instinctual caution. Third was our observational defense, watching wildlife proxies test wild foods to gather low-risk data. Fourth was our cultural defense, preserving life-or-death food knowledge across generations through sacred traditions. And fifth was our technological defense, using cooking, leaching, and fermenting to turn deadly poisons into daily staples. These 5 brilliant strategies worked together to carry our ancestors through hundreds of thousands of perilous years. The next time you taste something bitter and wrinkle your nose, pause and remember what is truly happening. You are running an ancient survival program perfected by ancestors who took the risks so you would never have to guess. Every peaceful bite you enjoy today is a triumphant celebration of human curiosity, resilience, and survival.